So very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with yet another session on technology as an enabler of internal audit process. I would like to invite Madam Mehak Jain, who's a young and bright chartered accountant, works with HCL. She has deep insight into internal auditing and it is her passion. So I present to you Madam Mehak Jain and request her to take care of the proceedings. Madam, the dice is all yours now.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving me such prestigious opportunity. So, a very good evening to all the members. I heartily welcome to all of you in today's webinar. First of all, thanking you all for being participant in this valuable seminar, organizing this enabler of internal audit, which is a great need in today's world. We are highly honored to have you today, as Nanda sir is a Central Council member of our Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Chairman of Internal Audit Standard Boards of our institute. He is always a great inspiration for all of us and young chartered accountants, as he has been a member of ICAI since 1991, which is a way before of my age even. So currently he is holding a chairmanship of Committee on Management Accounting of ICAI, Vice Chairmanship of Continuing Education Committee, membership on board of the 26 committees of ICAI. Furthermore, he was a Vice Chairman of major committees of ICAI, like CSR Committee, Banking Financial Services and Insurance Committee, Committee on Internal Audit, Chairman of Women Members Empowerment, Committee on Public Finance and Government, and many more to count on. So many major gratitude and thanks to you, Ajay sir, for hosting such seminar with the chairperson of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, UK chapter, and a senior leader in the trade finance profession, biggest international banks based in London. He has an expertise in the area of trade finance, anti-money laundering, financial fraud, and robotic process automation, and worked with 3 biggest banks with more than 20 years of trade finance experience across the global regions. So I would like to welcome you, sir, and hand over the dice to you for opening our keynote for today's session. Ajay sir?
Thank you, CA Mahak. Thanks, Nandaji, and all the dignitaries here and all the audience. I think this is a very, relevant topic. So I think I would like to first welcome all the, participant, all the, speakers on this, hugely important subject from the, from all of our members from the ICAI UK chapter. I would not like to bore you with the, what we do in UK chapter, but I think as any foreign chapter, we are basically providing a platform to the Indian chartered accountant to network, to get some, technical knowledge, to meet, seniors professionals in the, in the profession. And also, we do some of the family events. So I think this is something which is, very, very important for, in the today's time. As we see the internal audit in a traditional way, it is changing very rapidly with the technology and with the automation and robotic process automation and the data analytics. The whole face of audit is changing very, very rapidly. So in some of the cases, like the audit which used to take days and months can happen probably in a matter of few minutes, and in some kind a matter of few seconds. Because, you can crunch a lot of data with the help of technology. So I think I would not like to take the, the subject from the speakers, but, I think from the perspective of, providing you just a glimpse of what the topic is going to cover, I think I'm very excited to hear the speaker and, excited to understand that how technology is going to enable the internal audit, and how it is going to make much more, I think, I'll say secure and because the one of the probably, I wouldn't say disadvantage, but one of the, I think, shortcomings of the internal audit or any audit was we could do only the sample audit because obviously we can't touch each and every data. But with the technology, actually we can do 100% audit. So, and that's where I think it's very, very important to understand that how technology is going to enable us to have the better audit reports and the better control over the, better governance in the system. So thank you and welcome all.
Thank you so much. well highlighted the key areas of the internal audit and the major areas where we need to have a focus on. So before begin our session, Nanda sir, I would like to have, before proceeding the session, I would like to have your few points that you could highlight on this.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you so much. I'm really excited that we have three of the best speakers along with the address by Mr. Ajay Kumar, who happens to be the chairman of the London chapter of ICAI. We have Mr. Jitendra Khatri, Mr. Siddheshwar Bhalla, Madam, Mr. Ashish Jain, Madam Mehak Jain, and Aarti from our institute. Ladies and gentlemen, internal audit essentially is a management function, a function wherein you enable the management to have the proper reports so that they are able to take informed decisions. Very rightly said by Mr. Ajay Kumar that sampling had put the entire stance to a standstill because we were not able to report effectively on systems. But let me very candidly say that today's program encompasses three very important areas. The first, real-time audit and risk qualification. The risk quantification, very, very important. The second is remote internal audit using bots. And the third is, which we'll take in a retrospective order, is real-life use of technology in internal audit and SOX. So I want to tell you one thing very clearly, that chartered accountants, particularly in their life, have learned things in a different fashion. I'm reminded of a CA speaking to a non-CA. By way of a couplet, he said, "Kuch to fark hai teri aur meri taaleem mein." A CA saying to a non-CA, "Kuch to fark hai teri aur meri taaleem mein. तूने उस्तादों से सीखा है, हमने हालातों से सीखा है." We have learned the difficult way. We have learned what our client wants. We have learned what the regulator wants, what the government wants, what the clients want. And more importantly, we therefore are well poised to determine and define what is required. So on, if you speak about the real life use of technology in internal audit and SOX, I would like to tell you how technology has changed internal audit. With the advent of technology, internal audit has been changed manifestly. The inference which was drawn is totally changed now. What do? Internal audit by technology enables you to automate many functions of the audit process. That functions which earlier needed a lot of manpower were full of errors now have become error-free, and more importantly, the functions are now automated. The second is to spend less time on paperwork. We are gone with paperwork, all reports, and these reports exist till perpetuality. You don't have to take them on an immediate basis. If I draw a report, the best part is that when you do a digital audit, the evidence keeps alive for whole life, because whenever you want, you can go back to the audit trail and find it out. Let me tell Mr. Ajay that in India, from 1st April 2021, the audit trail of all transactions of bookkeeping was made compulsory. However, the government thought it fit and have postponed it to the next year. So what does this mean? This means that we all need to have to work on a different note. We all need to have to work on a different thought process. I want to tell you one thing again very importantly, and that is how technology can change our practice arena. We have a practice, we have a working, and how we can change that. The most important thing is how we can train our entire workforce, how we can train our articles, our staff, and more importantly, CAs also. If they're well versed with technology, they can do number of wonderful things. Technology also provides higher level of assurance to organizations. Technology also improves security and ensures that fraud is reduced. Technology also helps managing risk more effectively. So ladies and gentlemen, if you go on to these areas, you'll find many more areas which ultimately enable the technology process to render the best services. It allows for a continuous auditing and monitoring. When it comes to a concurrent audit or a continuous audit, with the help of technology, you need to employ less manpower. Going ahead, it also reduces errors and paperwork. And more importantly, it results in saving of time. The second session is remote internal audit using bots. Please understand, robotic process automation to assist internal audit, which was what essentially Mr. Ajay Kumar said, and he has been doing that in London. We have to understand that internal auditors apply robotic processes automation to their own internal audit procedures. If you have to list down the steps, I would like to specify the steps. The first, generate and standardize the data to run customer analysis, including checks for completeness of fields, duplicates and validations, etc. So if you draw some inference from, you call it a technology data, you understand what is required. The second is risk assessment to be focused on risk trend analysis and deep dives into the risk of organization. Risk assessment, mitigating the risk, identifying the risk, and in case any other risk comes in, how do you take care of the risk is very important. The third step is to analyze large data populations, which is humanly not possible. But with a click of a button, you are able to determine exception reporting, which will be very helpful to you. Time and cost saving that can be dedicated to more value add engagements. This is again a great motivator when it comes to doing large internal audits. And the third and final topic of the day is real-time audit and risk quantification. Yes, how do you adapt internal audit to a real-time environment? What do you need to do? You need to gather and analyze information in real time using a broader set of inputs. Yes, the inputs ultimately are analyzed, are worked upon, and a holistic review created, which can be used by management for different contours. For sales, you may use a different inference. For marketing, you may use something else. For accounting or for control setting, you may use another system. The second is adapt the audit plan as soon as it is needed. You can always adapt it. You can always change it. And the third is execute audit engagements based on this faster flow of information. So what I want to put forth is that technology has put us at a platform where we understand that our movements as an auditors have to essentially be a value add for the management, for the board or audit committee which appoints us. We have three of the very well acknowledged speakers from the industry, people who have always contributed to the board, and let me tell you, the board passionately looks forward to holding such programs. Last year, the whole year we went up on only on one theme, empowering SMPs. So this year, continuously we're moving on how technology can be an enabler of internal audit process. So we have, ladies and gentlemen, great faculties, and I hand over the dais to Madam Mehek Jain to introduce the next speaker. And I can promise you one thing, this will be very scintillating, very mind-boggling sessions. Please wait till then. And I'm very happy to announce you that we would at this moment have close to 2,000 people watching this program, and till the end we'll have more than 2,500 to 2,600 members. Thank you so much. I'm really excited that we have such great speakers, including Mr. Ajay, who has joined from London and has given us a very good note and has set tone to the entire discussions to follow. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your words. We are highly privileged to have this insight and on-ground reality from you. So moving on, we have our first speaker, C. Jitendra Khatri, who is a rank holder, chartered accountant, company secretary, and certified internal auditor, and a leader in internal audit, stocks, risk management, and SAP, with 7 in diversified industries like HCL Technologies, VCM Shriram, and JK Tires. Currently, he is leading the global internal audit team of Valvoline Incorporation for its international business across Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. And we are highly privileged to have him for our first topic, which is on real-life use of technology in internal audit and SOX. Sir, I would like to hand over the session to you.
Thank you, Mehak.
Welcome, Mr. Khatri. We welcome you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you, Nandadi. Thank you, Ajay Kumarji. Let me share my screen and then we can proceed from there. Yeah, you can see my screen.
Very much, sir. Very much.
Yeah. So, Nandaji has given a very, very nice summary or background of what I am going to cover here in this presentation. As the name suggests, it's a real life use of technology in internal audit. Based on my 17 years of experience in different organizations, I have gathered a lot of knowledge about the processes, internal audit process, and more so how the technology can be inbuilt into the internal audit as a process. And obviously, and therefore, when it says real life use, it means that when I'll be presenting my content, it will be more of what we have done or what we do rather than what we should do, or rather what we should do or what will be done. So it is more of what we have already done or achieved over a period of time or in various organizations. That's the whole task which we'll be talking about here. Moving on. Yeah. So the first thing which came, to my mind before I was thinking about this technology aspect, that what does technology eat in the breakfast? That what are the triggers which are required to at least have, so that any technology drive can be initiated in the organization. So in my view, so these were the four aspects which I was able to pen down. One is intent, passion, time, and skills. See, time and skills can be sourced from any others. You can get a new team member who has got the skill. You can allocate some time. But the most important aspect would be the intent and passion that needs to be there in any department, in any audit function to initiate their technology journey. So intent, passion, time, and skill. These are the four key aspects which needs to be there. And believe me, in my 17 years of experience, I worked in 4 organizations, and we had initiated, the technology journey, and we were not able to complete it because of lack of any of these aspects. In some point of time, the intent was there, the passion, we started well, but we were not able to complete it, or we had our uncompleted audit projects, therefore we had to drop those ideas of technology, or we had skills. So in my view, these are the 4 key aspects which any organization or any department has to have to initiate their technology journey and to sustain those technology journey. Then the next question was, why does technology required at all? So, these are the 4 benefits which I could think of when again, any technology aspect is required in any organization or in any function. So one is speed, consistency, error-free output, and our auditor's favorite topic, audit logs. Because we have, in case any process which is a manual versus automated, the automated process would be able to provide us more speed, consistency, because these are not human may have a fatigue, but the systems will not have a fatigue. In case we had designed a process effectively, an automated process would work exactly the same way. So therefore technology has those benefits of speed, consistency, and error-free output. Once we have designed it well, which is error-free, then all the results will be error-free output as well. And then audit log, what has been done by somebody, all those will be recorded, and you can clearly have those accountability on those tasks which have been performed. And therefore, during this whole presentation, I'll be talking about at every step of internal audit, how the technology, which aspect would be would be important in that particular automated process. Be it speed, is it consistency, is it error-free output, or is it the audit log? So overall, in the whole presentation, I'll be talking about these benefits again and again in my subsequent slides as well. So then the next question was in the mind, like, when we say technology as an enabler, is it the data analytics only are we talking about, or is it bigger than that? Because many of time, when you attend any of these, seminars, generally technology has been dealt as data analytics only. But the fact is, technology is far, far, far bigger than the data analytics. Yes, I agree that data analytics is a key part, is a key component of the technology in the internal audit phase, but technology is way bigger than that only data analytics. So what does that mean? Technology is even bigger than artificial intelligence, machine learning, and RPA. So that does not mean that in case your organization is not working on artificial intelligence or machine learning or RPA, that does not mean that you are not using the technology. Even after not having these aspects, you can still have a lot of technology as a part of your day-to-day work. And you can get the benefit out of it, and we'll be talking about that in our subsequent slides as well. And the last piece is technology even bigger than audit tools or even ERP? So technology as such is a very, very wide terminology, which includes not only data analytics, artificial intelligence, ERP, audit tools. It is much wider definition which we have got for the technology. So then, now the next question comes up when we said, okay, what is technology, or why technology needs to be, what is required to deliver a technology, what are the benefits of the technology, and what does technology mean. Then the next question comes up, like which all areas we can apply the technology in. So in internal audit at every stage, and I am going to tell you that these are various aspects or various steps within internal audit wherein we have been utilizing the technology very much, and we'll also talk about what are the benefits which we were able to get out of it. So technology is used in our organization. Technology is used in annual audit planning. We also use it in the task management. We also use in the time management, data analytics, issue management, audit reporting, and the follow-ups. So in every step, you will be able to see that the technology is there. And what I have tried to do is I'll be talking about these aspects, that how we are utilizing the technology. And at the back of your mind, you can also think through that in your organization, where do you stand? And therefore, at the end of this presentation, I'll also have a maturity model wherein you can compare yourself, wherein you can compare your own organization or your own department, internal department, and assess where do you stand and how can you initiate your technology journey. As I said, that's the whole intent of putting this presentation together, so that based on this interaction, at least even 10% of the people do start their technology journey within their audit function. That will be a win-win for me, and I would believe that the time which I had put in preparing this presentation would be well served. So here is about the annual audit planning process, and this is how we do in Valvoline world. And because my recent instinct is with Valvoline, and we have been utilizing technology very well there, and we have one tool called Audit Board, and this Audit Board tool we are able to get a lot of benefit and automation, and I'll be talking about that. As a part of our annual audit planning, we do have annual interviews with more than 70 key leaders within the organization. And here is all the automation or technology part is there. So what does that mean? It means that we schedule all those. So within the audit board, we have set up those questionnaire. Those questionnaire does automatically go to the process to those leaders, and those standard questions are there, and they do respond back on those all the questions which are within there. And those inputs are not only a qualitative input, but also the quantitative input which we receive from them, and the interview notes also during the discussion. So after we receive all those responses from them, we do have our interview with respective leaders, and then we document those interview notes there in the audit board. And above all, we assess all our audit universe items are evaluated on 6 parameters, and all those 6 parameters are selected by the system itself, and these risk ranking do occur within the system itself. And so as a result of which, we are able to prioritize the risk, the audits which we need to perform in a specific year, or in this fiscal year. And these input would be taken by all those 60 leaders within the audit board. We will be able to update based on these risk ranking based on our input as well. And there are 6 parameters like complexity, change in people, process, technology, and so on. So there are 6 parameters which we have come up with, and we take those inputs from those 60 leaders, and then put that into that audit board itself, and that is being input by the leaders themselves in that audit board tool, so that we are able to finalize the audit plan within the system itself. And finally, we also add those budgeted hours that, for a specific audit, what are the available hours which we have got, and how many hours we will be able to spend on a specific audit. So all these things are part of our one audit tool which is there. And then as a next step, we also have a quarterly reset. So it is not the one-time exercise which we perform. It's a quarterly basis. We do, have a, again, recheck with those leaders. And again, that is routed through our tool only so that we can get those input from there. And then we also perform our mid-year review of the audit plan. This audit mid-year review is to change the audits based on the resource availability, based on the changes of environment and anything. So these are the cases which are there. Now, if I were to tell you, if I were to ask, tell you that what are the benefits which are coming out of utilizing the technology here. So as you can see, S is a speed. So here we are talking about consistency. Speed is not so much what we are looking at here. What we are looking at is the consistency, error-free output, and the audit log. So we get a ease of input. This is because, all these tools are single sign-on. They need not to remember their password. It is based on their desktop login. They are able to log in into this app as well, in this application as well, and they are able to provide all those inputs. Record retention at any point of time. If we want to check that what was the response given for this particular audit 2 years back. So we have those records available. We are able to go back and check our notes, what we had, what was mentioned there. And so that's the beauty of having this tool in place. Error-free calculation. This was one-time setup which we performed, and now based on all those parameters which we have given a defined weightage to each of the component or each of the ranking criteria, and based on which this audit universe is calculated. So these are the error-free calculation which occurs, and then it's a consistent approach, consistency aspect, consistent approach for the comparison from year to year basis. So these are the various benefits which we get based on these automated process being in place for the audit planning and internal audit planning process. Moving on to the next slide, it's a task management, and again, the format is the same. Here these are the speed, error-free output, and audit log. These are the aspects which are there, and then what are the benefits which we get. It is here. So because my team is responsible for internal audit and SOX both, so I'll talk through very high level what is our task management process which is there. So at the start, for any audit, we have audit program. We divide those audit programs into the work steps, and those work steps are allocated to various team members. Along with the task, there is a budgeted hours which has been there. Once the testing is completed by the person, by the auditor, they will upload the supporting document of the testing. Then the audit manager will approve that, and then the task will be completed. So you can see that this is all within the system itself, so that you can have all the benefits that at any given point of time, I am able to see who is doing on what and what is the time which has been taken, and all those aspects are there as a part of this task management tool. And same goes for SOX. Here, again, the controls, the test, everything is in the system. Then the assignation of tester, L1 reviewer and L2 reviewer is occurred. And then even, the PBC, which is provided by client, this is also rolled out from the system itself, from the application itself. And then, the control performers can upload their own supporting, and then the test sheet can be, the tester can complete the test and submit their test sheet. And then it's the approval also within the system itself, and the test is closed. So again, what are the benefits which we are getting from here? It's a better accountability. Now nobody can say that, oh, I was not aware that I was required to work on this, because it's very clearly the task has been allocated to you, the time has been given to you, you have to complete it. So you can't say that, I was not aware that I have to do it, or, there was a lot of things which as a result of which I was not able to do it. So you get a better accountability from the person. Same goes for the efficient work, because everybody knows that, okay, they need to work on these aspects, so that we get the work very efficiently. And again, the maker checker by task approval. Here you can see that all those approvals are there, so that the team manager, team leader cannot shy away with his or her own responsibility, because that person has signed off on it. So there is a maker checker by the task approver as well. And at the end, we get a better audit trails, that who has done what, at what point of time we have done. So all these aspects are well covered by way of this tool, by having the task management automated or through system itself. Moving on to the time management, it is a timesheet which we have got, and again, many people think that timesheet is not so much critical, but believe me, any input for audit planning, it is very, very critical to have a appropriate time management system in place. So what we have got here is, the process works like this. Any team or project, team and projects are assigned within to that person, and then the person books their time on the project, and not only at the project but also at the time task level, so that what do we get in return? We are able to see what was our budget and what is the actual which is there, versus we also able to get that what is the billable and non-billable resource. So in general, out of say 2200 of number of hours, we generally believe that 1650 hours will be the billable hours which will be there for any resource. So we are able to go back and see that, okay, because, and what was the reason for if some person was not able to bill 1650 hours in a particular project. So we are able to get that, and then at the end of the day, all these inputs are utilized for our annual audit planning process, because those budgeted hours we are able to tweak it based on what time actually has been booked. And again, as I said, speed, error-free output, and audit logs are the benefit for the task time management. And now comes very interesting and the key component of internal audit technology piece. It's an evolution which we have also come across over a period of time. It starts with sample-based testing, Excel-based analytics. So this is how you can think of in any organization. This is how the progress occurs. However, there are exceptions also. So like if some organizations are at a very basic stage, they will be doing a sample-based testing more. If the next level function would be relying more on the Excel-based analytics than the sample-based testing. The next level would be analytics tool with the Excel data upload. So the analytics tools are there, and those are not linked to particular systems. So that's how it can be done. And same, there may be analytics. There are analytics tools which are connected to ERP, so that you are able to get a real-time data from that. And then the next level would be integrated tool with the visualization. Good visualization also helps. And the final would be the continuous control monitoring and the predictive analysis. We are going to talk about all these aspects here. So so in general, as I said, our focus should be more and more, as Mr. Ajay also talked about and Nandaji also talked about, that the focus should be more moving out of those sample-based approach to a more of 100% population-based. That's the whole intent. However, there are practical scenarios wherein you will also have to support your data analytics with the sample-based testing as well. And what are those cases? One is substantive testing. When you have to perform your substantive testing to validate that, you will have to do it. Second aspect would be where the data is not available, because if you go to any entity and those data are not maintained in a way that you can perform a data analytics, so you will have to go for a sample-based testing only. Or the data is lacking the change log. Even in those scenarios where the change logs are not available, most probably you will not be able to perform the data analytics which the way you want. But if those things are not there, then certainly you should move to the next level, which is Excel-based analytics which are there. And generally, even in our case, we have got, we are currently lying in between here, we are having an integrated tool with visualization, and we also are doing this continuous control monitoring. But still, there will be certain instances wherein we'll have to still rely on the sample-based testing and Excel-based analytics also. So when do we go for those Excel-based analytics? When these are the non-standard data, and these data which we had not thought of at the time of designing our tools or reports, but these are the non-standard data which are there. For those non-standard data, we still go ahead and do all our data analytics in Excel as well. And those are non-repetitive or ad hoc item analysis, wherein you will have to rely on the Excel-based data. So that's what we also do, that wherever those automations are possible, you certainly should go ahead and do that. Where these are not possible, you should not shy away in utilizing Excel, because Excel is again a powerful tool which is there. The next step or next evolution in our case also was, the data analytics tool with Excel data upload. So we had evaluated even the idea, as a tool. We had not integrated with SAP. And generally, when you go for analytics tools, when it is a repetitive analytics, be it entity wise, you have to perform analytics across the entity, across the period, or across the plant. These may be various aspects which may be there. Then you go for these analytics tools with Excel data upload as well. We had also evaluated IDEA. We had bought it. We utilized it. and again, it was not connected with the SAP, because our thought was, let's look at the utilization of it, and once we find it is successful, then we will move to a linked linked data analytics tool. But then later on we realized that, and similarly we had also piloted on the Power BI and Power Query, and believe me, this Power BI and Power Query is again a very powerful tool in case you or your organizations are looking at for it, because generally these Power BI are part of the 360 Office 365 suite, wherein you can get it on the free of cost from in those licenses as well. So you should be able to utilize that. We had utilized that and we got a lot of success out of it. The next step for us was also to go for SAP BIW, the business information warehouse, which we used, and also idea linked with SAP. We did not go ahead with this idea linked SAP, but we had certainly utilized this SAP BIW, wherein the audit specific queries were developed. Our team developed customs report from SAP BIW, so that we are able to utilize that in our regular audits as well. The next level which we also did was SAP Analytics. We are currently utilizing SAC, which is SAP Analytics Cloud, linked with the SAP BIW. And then we also are having Power BI linked with SAP BIW and Power Query. So what we do is, the step number one for any new query, we go ahead and develop ourselves within our audit team itself. We utilize the Power BI and SAP BIW, so that we are able to showcase it to IT that this is what we want, and then finally they go ahead and implement that in the SAC. So that's why we are able to get all those good visualization. And I have one example that when I'm saying visualization, what kind of thing which we are looking at it. The next step would be the continuous control monitoring, which is the next step which we are currently into. It is more of a, you need to work very closely with the control team and business team to identify the repetitive aspect, and team should also learn or work with the IT team to find out those relevant area, and then finally you should be able to identify the owner to run and act on those continuous control monitoring aspect. Again, we are in the process of utilizing this functionality very well. The next aspect is predictive analysis. Right now, the artificial intelligence, machine learning, these are the nirvana stage. We are yet to reach this level, but that's our ultimate objective, that we should be able to reach there. However, we have piloted, RPA, robotic process automation, in our function. We'll be talking about that also in the subsequent slides. So this is one of the example which I wanted to talk about. This is one example which I have taken from Excel-based analytics, wherein, as I mentioned, these are the non-standard data which were not available at the time of designing any report, but these came later on. But we utilized the Excel-based analytics therein, and we were able to achieve the requisite target. And the second one is the Power BI and SEC visualization. So this is one example which I'll just talk about in a while. Excel-based tracking. So I'll just give you an example. When we are saying Excel-based analytics, what are the things which we are saying? Our sales force generally goes to various retailers or mechanics, and they visit them, and all those data is captured in their bead route application. And those bead route application has the GPS tracking of those sales force. What we did was, as a part of this analysis, we extracted those GPS coordinates and find out the distance which was traveled, and then we validated with the T&E expense which was claimed by those employees, and then we looked up, or we compared both, and we said that, okay, these are the examples wherein, as per the application, they had only traveled 10 kilometers, whereas they have claimed 100 kilometers or so. So all those kind of analysis which were performed. Obviously, there were instances wherein it was said that I had left my phone at home, and therefore those GPS tracking was not captured properly. So we finally find out the false positive, and we ruled out that, and then we were able to complete that analysis. So this is one example when I say our team utilizes the Excel-based analytics. Again, one example, our team is well versed with SAP tables. We go into the SAP, we extract the SAP table level information and perform those analysis accordingly. The Power BI this is an example of like customer special pricing, so this visualization provide us what are the top 10 customers, what are the top 10 materials, what are the top 10 profitable customers, what are the top 10 loss making customers. And then we also have a price range of the metal. What was the minimum rate at which that metal was sold? What was the maximum rate at which the metal was sold? Similarly, minimum and median, minimum and average, and we calculate various differences, and based on which we find out the samples, and then we perform our validation based on that. So these visualization help us in identifying a judgment sample to perform those validation or testing. So this is one example. Same goes for, we also have a duplicate vendor payment queries, non-PO purchase or identify defaulters. These are the various kind of aspect which we do. And what do we get in return is speed, consistency, error-free output. Audit log is not so much concerned here. These are the three things which we get. So what we get, holistic view in our issue. Since we are able to provide assurance on 100% population, so this is a holistic view we are able to provide. And then we are also able to quantify the financial or reporting impact on the organization as a whole, rather than saying based on the sample aspect only. And ultimately, because these are repetitive in nature, it's very efficient. It is just on a click of button, you get everything what you want. And obviously, it also helps in our visualization to our audit reports as well, so that it is more user friendly, which is there. The last piece on the data analytics, it's not typically the data analytics piece, but yeah, RPA is also, one project which we have been taking, and these are the prerequisites of RPA. I'm sure Siddeshwar will be covering that in detail in his presentation, but these are the, various prerequisites which we believed in, which we identified. The rule-based task, if it is a rule-based task, if it can be clearly defined in a rule that, okay, if the step number 1 is failed, step number 2 would be done, step number 2 is failed, so step number 3 will be done. And then there is no human judgment involved in it. High data consistency is there, high data accessibility is there, task is frequently performed, and considered all possible scenarios. If you are able to do all these things, or if you have those things, you can certainly implement RPA in that. What we, in our organizations, RPA had been implemented for last 2 years or so in various finance function. This is one, we are just started on the for the audit projects, and we are focusing primarily on the ITGC and IT application SOX controls, wherein you can input the samples, you can the predefined SAP T codes will be rerun, the screenshot will be taken, and it will be pasted in the narratives, and the test results will automatically be determined, and finally it will be so that's the additional aspect which we are getting from the RPA. Earlier we used to perform all these activity once a year, but because of RPA, we are able to provide an added assurance to the management that, this task now can be performed on a monthly basis, so that we can get an added assurance. So that's the kind of, when you need to think from a RPA perspective, you need to go back and convince your management as well that, okay, these are the additional added assurance which you will be getting based on the RPA. And that's what we had done, and we were very successful in that. This is just a glimpse of various RPA, platform which are available. Automation Anywhere is very famous. We have been utilizing that, but this is a reference from Gartner, wherein these are the various, RPA tools which are available. And this was the customer satisfaction survey which they had performed, the Gartner had performed, and this is the result which they had talked about it. So this is just for reference which I had to put in. Moving on to the next point, which is on the issue management. As we talked about the issues, so the grayed out one are the process which are currently done offline, which has to be done offline, but rest all is within the tool, where the issue is identified by the auditor, it is approved by the audit manager within the system, and notification also goes to the process owner. But in between that, we have a process wherein issues identified, we have issues approved, then fact validation is done by the process with the process owner, target dates are set, final report is issued, and then the issue notification from the system goes to those process owner. And what we get in return is a quality output, timely responses, and record retention. So these are the various benefits which we get out of the issue management being automated. So it is all system based, which is the process which is there. I'll go back to Mr. Ajay. When he started, he said that we are able to provide more assurance. So yeah, if you compare the audit reporting in past versus now, earlier, if you were to reevaluate your own audit report, the way would be whether your sample based issues are what is the percentage of total issues which are there. So in general, in past, it was like 80% of the issues were sample based and 20% based on the data analytics. Whereas now it is a 80-20 rule which has been shifted to 80% based on the data analytics and 20% based on the sample base, because as I said, there may be still requirement, there may be still limitations of the data, and therefore you'll have to still rely on the sample based testing. But the yardstick for you to assess or re-evaluate would be that whether the data analytics based issues are 80% or not, and you are not heavily relying on the database. And again, the benefits are same. Holistic view, you can calculate the total impact, and visualization can also be achieved by way of having these data analytics based audit reporting rather than relying on the sample based testing. And this is the last piece which I'll be talking about on the audit step, which is the audit follow-up. And this is again, all these steps are handled by our system, and this system is flawlessly working, and we are able to get again speed and audit log as a benefit out of it. Issue identification, issue notification from the tool, it goes. Issue tasks are set up for high risk, so we only track high risk. So for all high risk, the issue tasks are created. The issue task notification goes to the process owner. The monthly reminders goes. They are able to, and the quarterly dashboard, again a good visualization which are there. So even at a leadership level, they are able to see on a click of button what are the open issues which are there, what are the overdues which are there, at what level they are lying, and all those kind of things. And then status update by owner. So the process owner can go back and update their status within the system itself, and the auditor can validate it, test it, and close it. Once it is closed, it is audit manager can close and approve those issues within the system. And finally, the issue is closed. Issue closure is communicated to management. So this whole process is within the system. And what we are able to achieve out of it: timely responses, record retention, better customer satisfaction. Because now at this person level, now he has a visibility on a click of button to see what are the issues, and he is not being getting surprised at the audit committee only that okay, these are the issues which are pending at his level. He can go and see on the system at any point of time what are the open issues which are there at their level. And it all, because of the timely information to the process owner, it also ensures a timely closure of the issues as well. So these are the various benefits in when we had utilized those audit technology, the technology in various steps of the audit, we are able to get these various benefits out of it. This is the summary of what we had talked about till now. It encompasses everything which we have said, and so these are the various processes which we talked about, and these are the scores. And this is nothing. This has not been created by any consultant or something. This is based on my own understanding and what we had discussed so far. And you can think from a perspective that whether, and you can rate yourself and you can calculate that at what stage your automation or technology journey is. In case your follow-ups are still not performed, you can provide a 0 to yourself. If it is based on email, then 1. Hybrid, only auto reminders goes, then 2. Or as I said, all those issue status, reminders, updation, everything is happening, then it will be a matured state 3. So same way, at various stages, whether it's unstructured, in terms of audit planning, if it is unstructured, then you can rate yourself as a 1. Annual review with notes 2. Or if you have a tool which you are able to provide all those inputs, then you can rate yourself as a 3. And then you will be able to assess yourself that where do you stand in your own technology journey. And the whole idea of putting this together is you can assess your own status of your audit function, of your firm's automation journey or technology journey, and then based on the result, you should be able to take some action out of it, that okay, these are the areas where you are lacking in terms of automation, and how can you achieve that, how can you invest your time, passion or skill and you are able to get those technology upgradation within your system. And this is one, this is the final slide. This is, based on my own experience, and these are the few sample companies which I have plotted based on their technology journey, because obviously within 17 years, the outlook towards technology has also changed. Therefore, functions are more looking towards the technology piece of it. But still, you will be able to see that there are varied kind of stages which can be there. You may be falling in between anywhere, and certainly we are not the best. Obviously, we also have a room to improve, and therefore I mentioned as a matured plus, wherein we would also want to go to the machine learning and artificial intelligence level. But yes, the journey is on. We need to keep on putting those effort. As I said, the four key components are passion, intent, time, and skills. If we are able to provide those inputs, certainly we will be able to inch up in our technology journey. So this is very high level or whatever learning which I had based on our technology journey. Happy to help in case anybody has any question even after this webinar. Please feel free. This is my email ID which I have given here. This is my LinkedIn link. You can contact me, and in case you need any help in terms of understanding more about what I talked about or anything which you think that you should be able to, if I can be of any help in helping you in your technology journey in your audit function. So that's it from my side, and over to you, Mehak.
Thank you so much, sir. This was very much an informative session and a valuable and high-level crux which you have depicted out of your own experience, and we can't be able to gain it from any other resources. Thank you so much, sir. And we acknowledge the fact that about how the technology has become an essence of our professional practices in today's scenario, plus the benefits which you have also depicted in your session. Thank you so much, sir. To move further in our session, we have our second speaker, C.A. Siddeshwar Bhallaji, who is Secretary and a member of Indian Board of Institute of Internal Auditors, and who holds the position of President for Institute of Internal Auditors, Delhi chapter, leading the governance, risk resilience, and compliance with Mazars in India as a partner, and who has 18 years of professional experiences as a chartered accountant and company secretary, where he was associated with KPMG, GE, EY, Deloitte, BDO in multiple engagements like enterprise risk management, IA, business process improvements, re-engineering and transformation, redesigning frameworks for governance across the different sectors like manufacturing, automotive, FMCG, retail, hospitality, healthcare, even across the geographies like USA, UK, Canada, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Bangladesh, etc. So I welcome you, sir, to give your valuable insight on our second topic, which is remote internal audit using VTUs.
Thanks, Mehak. I am audible and my screen is also visible, na? Just confirming that.
Sure, sir. Yeah.
The slide is there. Okay. So firstly, let me thank all the participants and to the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Nanda sir, Ajay ji, Mehak, Aarti for giving this opportunity to share my perspectives in terms of how technology can play a role in internal audit, and I'll be speaking on robot-enabled remote internal audits. It's like robotic audit, which I'll be talking about, and that's the reality which we see today. May not be that much, but still we are seeing a lot of it now. My co-speaker Jitender ji has set a very good context, I must say, and thanks to him. I'll try and build over that, and I'm sure Ashish ji, the third speaker, is going to mesmerize all of us with his presentation as well. So I'll start with the evolution of audit and automation. And the crux that I want to send across here to all the participants is that change is the only constant. I just want to show a video, Mehak, over here. I'm sure it'll get played. Just trying to do that. Is the video visible, Mehak?
Yeah, it's refreshing. About to come.
Welcome to the history of audit. Proud to be auditors because of the important role it plays. It helps to know something of the history behind audit's development. The first references to audit are around the time of the Roman Empire, some 2000 years BC. The emperors appointed bright and ambitious young men that they considered trustworthy as quaestors. The quaestors were sent to the corners of the Roman Empire to ensure the governors who ruled the provinces were spending the money that Rome had sent correctly, the assets that money had bought were protected and looked after, existed, and importantly, that the taxes the governors were due to collect and send to Rome were being collected and were being sent to Rome without the governors taking a slice off the top. So a theme starts. Somebody, in this case a ruler, appoints someone they consider trustworthy to verify financial expenditure, assets, and that there's no fraud. Moving on some 3,000 years to Henry I of England. It was Henry I who first used the word audit, which actually means to hear. Like the Roman emperors, he sent auditors to the corners of England to confirm that the barons who ruled on his behalf those areas were spending the exchequer's money as it should do, that assets again were protected, and that taxes were being collected and sent back to the king. The key development, though, that created audit as we see it today was due to the Industrial Revolution in the late 1700s. For the first time, investors became part of the business process. But investors will only invest money in something they believe is safe and they understand. So they appointed people they considered trustworthy, often business associates and friends, to verify that the information being provided by the management, the people behind the potential business, was, well, to use modern terms, true and fair, something they could rely on. So there we have it. Audit today remains about this. Someone trustworthy, reporting to investors, note not companies but investors, on financial information prepared by management and whether that information is reliable or, again, to use the terms, true and fair. Of course, audits developed further. The stock market crash in the US in 1929 resulted in a lot of new regulation. From then, auditors needed to be professionals, qualified, not your friends. It also brought around a much greater focus on the profit and loss and financial reporting of performance. The development of computers and computerization enabled businesses to become truly global and truly massive. And we had to adapt our organizations and techniques to respond to this. Auditing scandals in the 1980s and 1990s brought further regulation. But one of these scandals, Enron, demonstrates the importance of being trustworthy. Enron were audited by Arthur Andersen, trustworthy. Hopefully that will competence. Final point, though, is that history has shown us we exist only because
We are back on the slide now. I just wanted to show that much.
Yeah.
Am I audible, Mac?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so the takeaway that I wanted to give from that video was that auditing is an age-old profession, all of us know. There from the 2000 BC, as we just saw. and it is going to continue in the future years. It's only the role that has changed. Technology has played an important role now. And if we look at it from the very beginning, auditors were there, they will continue to remain. The profile might change, what they do might change. Why I'm sharing this sort of a context is that today, when I share with you robotic audit, the very first question that might come to your mind is that are we as auditors going to become redundant? No, that's not the case. Yeah. So as I take it forward, and just there's the setting the context, are you driving the change or are you driven by the change? If you look at this slide, on the first half, you have technology for business operations. Over a period of time, what sort of technology has been used in the business side? So from the very basics of calculators, spreadsheets, DA, standalone enterprise systems, remote connectivity, ERPs, cloud computing, robotic process automation, ML, big data analytics, and so on and so forth. If you look at the communication that has been there, the business communication, today we are on emails, smart tools are being used, high-speed internet, 5G. And we've seen the time when it used to be on hard copies, letters, hard copy documents, and then obviously the transition was there. On the lower part of the slide, I'm sharing with you what are the audit techniques and how they have changed over a period of time. Earlier, the audit used to be more focused based on inspections, physical verification, inquiry, observation, examination. Yeah. Today, these things are being used, but not that frequent. It's rare. Analytical procedures, yes, it used to be there. There's a limited use now as well. CAT, computer assisted audit technique, is moderately in use. And now here I'm talking about audit techniques. System walkthrough configuration is going to gain prominence in future as well as we talk about robotic audit. And today, I would put a disclaimer here that unless we have organizations which are mature in terms of their robotic processes, we cannot do a robotic audit over there. So robotic audit is not something that can be planted in any organization. It has to be based on the maturity level of an organization. I think Jitender ji a while back he was very well articulating all that. And I think that is the essence which lies. But yes, at the same time, in organizations, we do find some of these sub-processes, not even the processes, some of these sub-processes are getting digitized. There is a robotic process. The first one could be in the finance function itself when you talk about the payment cycle getting processed, or even from the revenue side. These are the basic things which are now being looked into by the RPA, the robotic process automation. So when I say intelligent audit using AI, artificial intelligence, remotely accessing tools, that is which is going on as of now, and it's going to be the prominent part and the dominant part of future. Let me share with you my perspective, how I look at the 3 lines model. It's no more called the 3 lines of defense, it's the 3 lines model. And on the slide, we'll go from bottom to top. Bottom, we have obviously the governance committee, audit committee, shareholders, all the stakeholders which are there. And as you see the first line is where the actual transactions are happening in any function, across any function, wherever the activity is happening, whether it's a finance function, marketing function, production area, sales, procurement, any of it. That's the first line. And there is big impact in terms of robotic process automation. And why I'm linking it over here is because the extent of robotic process automation that we see as independent auditors, as we see in the first line, we need to gear up on the change and have robotic audit planted in those sub-processes or processes. Today, as we see, this first line is getting largely influenced. When we talk about robotic process automation, it's this first line which is getting largely influenced. And gradually we will find the processes getting digitized, robotic process is going to come. As we move up in the slide, we've got the second line. It's an oversight. Yeah, it's the role of risk management, controllers and all. The second line which is there. Compliance and risk management automation is gaining prominence in this particular line as well as we speak. And third line is basically we as internal auditors, and I normally call internal auditors as corporate doctors. So the third line is where we talk about automation in audit. We may call it robotic audit, we may call it robot-based audit, or a large extent of usage of technology, which we just saw in a couple of slides a while back with my co-speaker. So the essence, the takeaway from this slide is that the third line, which is audit, internal audit, has to gear up as the first line, which is the execution line in any organization, is moving towards robotic process automation. So any organization which is having RPA in place, I think need of the hour is that those particular sub-processes, I'm not saying intentionally processes, sub-processes should be robotic audit based. If it is not, then as auditors, we must contribute in the journey of robotic process automation as well. Our recommendations in the audit report, whatever tools we may be using, must include the roadmap on robotic process automation, because once that thing is there, then only the robotic audit can be successful. Now, what changed during evolution of audit? And here we are seeing the traditional audit, the business contextual audit, and the automated cognitive use. The traditional, in my view, I don't call a transaction-based audit a traditional audit. I also count a risk-based audit as a traditional audit in today's time, because we're already in 2021. Yes, there used to be dependency on manpower, on experience, limited traditional audit areas. More mindset was more towards detective control mechanism. 100% on-site audit. I think with this pandemic, which is more like an endemic now, we as internal auditors need to really gear up in terms of looking at offline audits. And when I say offline audit, it is not robotic audit. So I'll bring the distinction in a while in my presentation in terms of offline audit that we do and how bots can further augment the effectiveness of remote audit. The second is the business context. So when we say that, okay, are we linking our audit areas, our audit techniques, are they getting somewhere linked to the strategy of the organization? How many times are we looking at the output of our audit getting linked to the strategy? You would all recollect that there is this COSO 2017, which is the Committee of Sponsoring Organization 2017, which says, how does risk feed strategy? That means when as auditors, we are doing a risk-based internal audit, how many times does our internal audit report give an input to the strategy of the organization? So it's not that we need to be privy to the strategy, but privy in the sense in terms of looking at those documents and all, but in discussion based, definitely we need to see. And that's where the whole idea of having entity level controls also comes into place. So when I say business contextual, that's where we are there. We have to a large extent moved also as internal auditors. If we have not, I'm just putting a disclaimer there, I think the external environment has influenced us to do that. If you take an example of some of the new business models in the startups, we will find that the business contextual is automatically getting in place by internal auditors. And then you have the automated part, very limited dependency on manpower. Having said that there is limited dependency on manpower and the free up, the audit resources are having a more free time, it is not that auditors will become idle or they will become redundant. There are a lot of areas, new areas, and that is the last slide which I'll be sharing. What are the areas that the internal auditors should focus on? I think in terms of robotic audit, that is going to take some time. But yes, when we today talk about integrated financial reporting, and that is the buzz, integrated financial reporting, what we as internal auditors are doing to give comfort or assurance to the management that yes, it's not only the processes, the systems that are effective and efficient, but yes, when we talk about contribution of an organization to society, to environmental norms, and to the overall governance of the organization, which to a large extent we are doing right now also, as far as the governance is concerned. But how are we looking at the contribution of an organization in terms of towards society, towards environment? And that's in a sense an integrated financial reporting, which internal auditors should give an assurance on. So I will just move along, and yes, there is 100% data digitization and 100% control testing in majority of the areas when we talk about automated audit. Let's also look at addressing some of the legacy dependencies. Now, if you see the key challenges which are faced by companies during audits, data management, time consumed by auditor or process owner in data management. It's not only the auditor's time that is going idle sometimes, and there are always budgeted hours which are there. We're seeing a while back in our previous presentation, but it is also the process owner's time, because they are the ones who are actually supporting the audit at the same time. Correctness of data. These are the challenges which we face during audits, and I will share that how automation addresses all these types of challenges. Data storage and backup, multiple ERPs, and they are not integrated sometimes. Auditor is perhaps having a challenge, is not acquainted to access all the ERPs. Access rights could be an issue. Lack of team continuity, team dependency, quality and experience of team. These are the things which may sometimes hinder the effectiveness of audit as well. How does robotic audit address all of these things is something we'll look at. Different approach or methodology used by auditing, and I'm not saying the methodology could be common across from all the organizations as standards and internal audit standards, but sometimes it does happen that it becomes individual dependent, and we need to address that thing. That's training. As part of training, we need to do that, but till the time it is not addressed, how do we overcome that sort of a challenge? Coverage, it has been spelled out a couple of times. Limited areas, processes getting covered, might not cover all the line items in the checklist. Sample-based analysis and reviews may happen. Audit periodicity. So we know in a risk-based audit, we have high, medium, low, high getting covered normally once in a year, medium once in 2 years, and low in once in 3 years. How do we have on-demand visibility of audit, real-time visibility? How do we have more effective, more number of audits without putting in that much of effort? Consistency in reporting, and obviously the audit cost also to a large extent going down that way. So if you see robotics, how do they address the legacy dependencies which we just saw a while back? See, and while I'm putting all of this, I am again putting a disclaimer that the relevance and the importance of human beings as auditors is not going to get discounted, because the soft skills, if I can put it that way, plays an important role in the complete journey of audit, which is extremely critical and important. But yes, when we talk about knowledge, experience, yes, we create those through the form of artificial intelligence in machines. There is a machine learning concept which is there, and the machines, they get geared up, attuned to address all those things. As internal auditors, over a period of time, we may have the onus while we are looking at a robotic audit for a robotic process automation, we may have the onus to refine that sort of an intelligence in the machine. That's a critical area which I see coming up as one of the audit areas for all of us. Move towards a highly efficient and improved system resulting in faster processing, and that's what the robotic audit does. Seamless flow of information across organization and greater security of data. Timelines get met. In fact, to a large extent, they get shortened also in terms of the total audit life cycle. Integration of multiple ERPs or tools that are being used. A bot can actually do that thing. In a while, I'm going to show you a demo of one of the demos of a bot. And there are a couple of them. Maybe this presentation can be shared with all the participants, and at a click of a button, all of you can see it on your machines. And then obviously we reduce and eliminate dependency on manpower. But having said that, it is only for, so if I can say, put it this way, that you've got a record to report, which is like a finance function. You've got an order to cash, which is like a sales cycle. You've got a plan to produce, which is a manufacturing. You've got a procure to pay, which is a procurement cycle. Yeah. And a hire to retire, which is like a HR function. So say most of the sub processes in these areas over a period of time, and I'm not saying immediately that is there, are getting audited through robots, through bot. Yeah. So what do the auditors do? And that's what I'm saying, that we will look at it towards later part of the slide, that there are newer areas which we have been talking about, but we will be including that as part of our audit plans. I'm sure some organizations have already included some of those areas. So why robotic audit is the new normal? It gives you end-to-end automation of the complete life cycle of an audit, right from data extraction, cleansing, transaction testing, analytics, information sharing, and also reporting. But yes, the presentation is to be made by the people, because that's where, to a large extent, the soft skills also count. Cognitive and learning capabilities. Over a period of time, machines are able to and capable of learning decisions. Autonomous decision making can be made based on ML. Cognitive automation will enhance human presence. User experience and last mile integration. If you look at, I just spoke a while back that there are multiple ERPs and those all can be integrated. Even third-party applications can be integrated, and a consolidated review, a comprehensive and a consolidated review can be done, which is part of the internal audit report. Minimizes human intervention. And I will not refrain from saying here that if it minimizes human intervention, not as auditors, but as robotic process automation, the chances of, or let me include RA also, the chances of any fraud scenario gets more complicated. I think that is also need of the hour as we see our regulations moving towards focusing on fraud risk or anti-fraud controls. And ease of monitoring and measurable ROI. If you look at, we can have the performance of bot also monitored, and obviously the turnaround time is very quick and fast. I will quickly skip on this slide because I want to spend some time in showing you a sample robotic audits. So, but yeah, these are some of the benefits of automation in audit. Obviously, it reduces operating cost, and there is a faster, quick turnaround time that we see. Now, let us see, before we look at some of the demos, internal audit, what's the as-is process? And if you look at the first one from the top, review previous year's internal audit reports and current year process walkthrough. See, the green, wherever the green is there, the possibility of automation is high. Wherever there is yellow, it is medium, and wherever there is red, it is low. So the review of previous year's reports and current process walkthrough and all, it has to be done largely by internal auditors, not by bots. As we move along, data extraction, there's decent amount of bot enabled that can be done. Sample selection, again, we can do that. And then we have the transaction testing, where majority of the time also gets spent in terms of 35% if you see. And then the management response and queries noted. Finally, the draft reports and dashboard, and the final report and presentation, which is there. If you look at it, almost around 80%, approximately 80% of what is being done in the complete audit lifecycle on field can be automated through a bot. Yeah. What does it do actually, if you see? So there is an extraction of data cleansing. The data is getting analyzed. There are exceptions which are getting reported, discussed, and then the draft report and communication is made to the stakeholders. That's complete if you look at the process, and that's what we as auditors also do. So it's just basically looking at what a human auditor is doing from what a robotic audit can do. But before that, it's important to also understand and appreciate that what goes behind this robotic process as an audit. So robotic audit, what goes behind that? And we'll start from bottom to top again, where there is 01 written, transaction testing library. So what you do is you are actually configuring, you are actually giving a command and configuring in a machine what are the various tests to be done. An exception library is also getting created and populated over a period of time. Similarly, the observation and report library is getting created. And the best part is that as auditors, as human auditors, let me say, we have to have a repository of industry or company insight available in the machine, so that the bot, through its cognitive abilities and artificial intelligence, can deep dive into what should be the recommendation. Yeah. And all of this which I'm talking about is quite at a surface level, but there goes a lot into it when you have to actually develop a bot. Yeah, so you develop a bot, you implement that bot, and the audit goes on a concurrent basis. But having said that, again, I would put a disclaimer, because this is something which is, I would say, to a large extent new. When we talk of a robotic audit, it is essential to see to what extent the process is automated. Normally, with my experience, I will share that if I have to do a robotic audit, I will not plunge into any organization, any new organization, new for me, where I have not done the audit in recent past. I would like to do a human audit first, come up with the level of automation that is already there. Obviously, the audit has its journey and that is done. What is the level of automation in the process? Is that level of automation commensurate enough to have a robotic audit put in place? If it is there for some of the sub processes, create a POC, a proof of concept for the management, run them through, yeah, and then ultimately take it in a bigger way. So it's a step-by-step process. We can't actually do it in a bulldozer way. Let me put it there that way. Yeah. So, but that's what goes behind the machine, the bot that we are talking about. And obviously the implementation approach is the process and business understanding, deliberations with the industry SME. I would say the functional heads, the process owners, they know the business best. And obviously, in case there are consultants, the help of that is also taken. The team that is developing the bot is also to be part of it. Normally, I expect internal auditors in today's time to be largely tech savvy. They understand the nuances of how a particular process in a sequential activity form will be translated into a system. It's more something like a business blueprint document. When you actually have a SAP enabled or implemented in an organization, or Oracle or any of the ERPs that is there. Yeah. And then, like we said, the library development, the testing scenarios already existing, the new testing scenarios that needs to be put in. Obviously, then you need to have the management approval and a user acceptance test done. Audit goes live. And then finally, a periodic assessment or a review of the robotic audit also needs to be done to see that it is functioning adequately and properly. And if there are any changes in the process, that is getting configured as part of a change in the robotic audit step. So basically, using bots for internal audit, what does it do? it actually as a number one step reads the documents. So today, when I am talking about a robotic audit, I'm taking a scenario where there is a ERP in place. It could be even Tally. Yeah, Tally is also a good ERP, or SAP, Oracle, JD Edwards, whichever ERP is there. Given my experience, I can say that any of these ERPs would give a 70% max automation to a business process. Beyond that, you would need 70 or slightly more, 70 to 80% in the range. Beyond that, you need a bot as part of the process, which is the RPA, robotic process automation, to make it completely digitized, going to 90, 100%. 90, 100% as a process level, but as a sub-process level, it will either be 100 or it will be just 70, 80 if the ERP is being used. Now, once we say that, that means the documents, maybe say an agreement which is there. Yeah, and we can say a procurement of a material and an agreement has been uploaded in the ERP, which is SAP. And the bot has the capability to, and it has been designed, instructed that it will go to the path, and I'll show you in a while how it will read through the document and the relevant clauses. So there is a standardization of agreements that also should be there. Otherwise, you will need to configure the bot those many times that, okay, how do you read an agreement? So if the clauses are consistent for a particular process, say in a sales, the sales agreements are consistent, the bot will use less time to read the documents. Yeah. And there could be structured and unstructured data. So where we talk about Excels and all is more like structured, but when we talk about these scanned documents, it's just unstructured data, which the bot is going to decipher, read and decipher that what exactly is it. So it can read PDF, Word, Excel, and identify the important information, extract data from the ERP, from the relevant. So looking at the fields in the ERP, the way we do as human auditors, what we do, same thing a bot needs to do. But yes, there is a level of maturity in the automation of a process that needs to be there till we conclude a robotic audit. And then the document storage and trail, analysis of data, transaction testing, reconciliations that gets performed by bots, the if-then rules, decision rules, all is pre-fed. Connecting to system APIs, which is your application programming interface, multiple ERPs that could be there. And on a standardized, and this is point number 8 is something which we have seen it also. Yeah, there are some tools that do a standard report drafting, which is there. And then finally, the bot can have the capability to email the report. So if the Outlook is there, they can open it like a human being is doing, and they can email the report as well. Yeah. So if you just look at class 1 business process automation, class 2 is enhanced process automation, and class 3 is cognitive automation, where it can sense, say, a human face or a human, the way the person is going to react. Yeah. So cognitive automation is there. This is something as a ROI. Well, I will leave it to you for reading. Yes, we do work for 8 hours effectively, but bots can work 24 hours. The transaction testing time obviously is 1/5 that in experience we have seen. Areas that got audited is obviously on a daily basis if you want that to happen. Overall audit life cycle also reduces. The what can go wrongs are detected real time, and there is obviously the travel and operational cost is obviously not there, and it is minimal. Initially, while you have to set up and all those things would be there, but as you move along in the journey, so this also opens for us as professionals, as chartered accountants, as internal auditors, to work not only in a limited geography, but we can cut across in India or even spread the paths global. So before taking much time, so these are like 5-6 of illustrative proof of concepts that I have, and at a click of a button, it can. So once you have this deck, you can see, but as one sample, I will show you the profitability analysis when you have a logistics trip analysis being done. And here, so I'm just making a click and let me see if it opens. Meg, I'm just confirming that in the last video, the voice was audible, no?
Yes, it was audible.
Okay. So this is a sample which has been a bot audit. us full screen. Yeah.
Variance analysis bot initiated by the user. Bot logs into ERP system using predefined login credentials to extract and save the cost report in specified folder location. Bot sanitizes the data by eliminating spaces, hyphen, colon, etc. under column name vehicle number. Bot opens the CN report and initiates reading for specific data fields. Bot opens cost report and initiates reading for calculating the following variances. 1. Variance. 2. Cost variance. 3. Profitability variance. Bot prepares trip, cost, and profitability variance sheet by creating additional columns.
So this is something which we do manually and the bot is doing. It's a long one, 10 minutes. I won't like to eat on my successor speaker time, but there are a couple of things I'll just show you. Yeah, so this is something, so it's the audio is already there because it's more to share in terms of how it is done, but the configuration at the back end, what I was sharing with you a while back, has been done. And in a while, I just show you how it is also taking data from the internet.
Bot extracts daily fuel price data from IOCL official website into an Excel file.
So it's automatically going to the internet, and it can go to any site. So we have these distance calculations that can be done and fuel prices that can be picked.
Bot extracts the distance between two locations from Google Maps into the trip variance Excel sheet.
That's how we also look at it.
Bot adds 20% to the Google Map distance as the tolerance limit and calculates the difference between the Google Maps distance and distance as per report.
So I'll just quickly skip on this. I'm sure all of you would have noticed and appreciated the report, how it is being done. Something I'll just show you. Just trying to skip on. So that's the report which it is making, yeah. And it's going to email it as well.
Variance analysis report updated. Bot opens Outlook to send the exception cases Excel and variance analysis report to the concerned team members.
It's a standard, it'll write every time the same unless it is configured differently. And send button and there it goes, yeah. we are back on the slides. I'll just quickly skip and come on that. By default, it takes the first slide. That was just one of the samples which I had shown you, and there are 5-6 of them which later you can have a look at it. So if you click on your machines also on the right hand side, these icons which are there, you can look at all of them: procure to pay, inventory, warranty, OTC, all of these. Yeah. So that is one. And then see, now the important part is that while we've talked about the 2000 BC, what audit used to be, how it has changed and transformed, and we are talking about robotic audit, which to a large extent is there in present times, and it is going to be the future. Undoubtedly, this is going to be the future. But it's important that we have our approach also a very holistic one, which is a smart and digital approach for audit, where we say we use smart analytics, the eye of forensics, or whatever is getting configured in the bot, it's with this background. So when you have an eye of forensic, you have the fraud risk checks which are there already embedded as part of the queries so that the bot can do that. So what we do as human auditors, the bot also does the same. IFC checks, cyber security, SOX like Jitendra ji was mentioning, operational auditing, so getting the SME in place, all the inputs from there, compliance reviews, from a legal standpoint, contractual standpoint, financial reporting standpoint, IFC, ICOFR, and then the entity level controls from a risk and resilience. So all of it, a 360-degree holistic coverage. And I just thought, since we are more like in this endemic, while we talk all of it in terms of robotic audit, in terms of a holistic approach, we also need to be flexible without compromising on controls. Yeah, so that what needs to get focused from an operational business performance point of view to basically curb or deter any sort of a fraud scenario getting formed in any of the processes or sub processes. Yeah, and also to a very important critical point here is flexibility in the existing SOPs, because the way of working, we may call it a new normal, which is now the normal, but there is bound to be deviations in the SOP. So we may look at compensating controls, because otherwise what will happen is, to whatever extent in automation, it'll be like, just in the paucity of word I'm saying, it'll be like more like a rubbish sort of a thing, a report which somebody will say, this is more like a standardized report. There are compensating controls in place, and still because a bot has done it, I think that's how we are also now looking at it, that we don't have to go just the traditional way that a sign is not available or something like that. If it is a 3-way or a 4-way match is in place, I think to some extent you may consider some of the preliminary procurement related checks to be in place, unless there are other compelling reasons when you look at the share of business and all those things. So that was it in terms of remote internal audit. So see, while I have talked about bot enabled internal audit as of now, but bot enabled remote internal audit, and obviously to a large extent it becomes remote. But when we say remote, and you look at on this slide, the 6 steps are actually the ones that all of us follow in terms of process understanding, planning the audit, taking out the information, performing analytics, fieldwork, and then reporting. And there are, I would say, technology tools that are available, whether in the form of emails, ERPs, audio, WebEx. Right now what we are doing is also one of the tools, scanned documents, extraction of data from system offline through remote ways. All of it is possible, I think. But the question that may come is that to what extent can the coverage be there? See, it cannot be 100%. So let me be honest there. And I have excluded strategic areas here, but if you look at support and the core areas, normally in a product and customer order 95%, and this is backed up by the each line item wise checks that are performed, and the percentage is based on that. So procure to pay 90%, operations, sale, dispatch. If you look at HR, accounts, and these are the percentages that have been given in terms of how much can be a remote internal audit give comfort in terms of the entire process or the checks that needs to be performed there. So while the human audit, I'm just reiterating, is getting replaced in some of the areas by bots, what is the relevance of human beings there? Soft skills, I just said, but look at these areas, some of the illustrative areas. I think when we talk about environmental social governance, and SEBI is also coming up with norms on this, as internal auditors, we need to look at the ESG, compliance to ESG, audit of automated processes. Say RPA, you move in an organization where they say my complete finance function is automated or my complete sales cycle is automated. It's at a click of a button. Yeah. What do? What do you audit over there then? So you will basically look at scenario building. What we call is more like a fishbone analysis. You look at a scenario building at each and every, so there is a transaction, there are various activities, steps that are there in the transaction. You think of anything. So just for comfort, I will say, okay, you are thinking of a payment cycle, because that's the most talked about as far as the automated process is concerned. So you say, okay, there is an invoice that has come, it is scanned and it is in the system. There are some fields that we need to look at. So there's no duplicate processing of a particular invoice is one of the fraud risk checks which could be there. Yeah. And obviously the 3-way or the 4-way match, which is there. 3 is the GRN, the PO and the invoice, and the 4 is the agreement that comes along with it. So what are the various baby steps that need to be taken as part of automated process that has been looked into? If there is any sort of a deviation with respect to say tax implication in a particular state, and I'm not talking about GST, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about certain state specific taxes, how they have been considered when you do a robotic process audit. Yeah, it's a RPA audit here I'm talking about. And then you move to a RA, you configure those things, and what as a human being you're doing that. So when say a situation, RPA is there and a RA is there, robotic process is there and a robotic audit is there. What is the role of an auditor then? So the role of an auditor is that they will look at the robotic process, changes that have happened in the business process because of change in line, change in way of working, how that has got configured in the RPA, and then obviously it has to be traced back in the RA as well, the robotic audit. And then culture audit, very important. I think this is something which has to come as part. So these are not which we can depend on a bot. These areas as of now are something that we need to do as human auditors. Social media, enterprise risk management audit, auditing the strategy, very important. I think this has been untouched, but it has to be there. Auditing the strategy, compliance reviews, data privacy. We may see the IT Act soon in place. Cyber security, so cyber security to some extent even the bot can do, but yes, human intervention would be required so that the bot is not counterproductive that way. So I think I have just tried to be on time. I was slightly wondering in terms of eating away more time. So back to you, Mehak. I have done with my presentation, and as you said that we can take the questions at the end, but I'm happy to take it whenever you advise.
Yes, sir. This was great, sir. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing such an immense knowledge and giving all the members the guidance about how we could grow our internal audit techniques with changing time scenarios and become more efficient and effective in our practices, considering robotic process automation with least human intervention. And I surely believe this smart digital approach which you have depicted and the remote audit methodology which you highlighted would be helpful for many of our participants, either in their practices or maybe in their services. Thank you, sir. Now I would further like to continue this session with our third and utmost important topic, which is real-time audit and risk quantification. To present this session, I would like to invite and welcome CA Ashish Jain, who currently holds the internal audit function as Chief IA Officer of Nyara Energy Limited, and who holds more than 20 years of expertise in audit, risk management, governance and controls, compliance and forensic investigation areas in large Indian and multinational organizations. So please welcome, sir, to take the session.
Thank you very much for having me here, and I would like to also appreciate the organizers and the institute, the participants, and the fellow speakers to delve into this subject in so much of depth and give such great insights. So big thank you for that. So before we start, I just wanted to check if the audio is good and my screen is visible.
Yes, sir. Everything is fine. Your voice is audible and the screen is also fine.
Okay, all right. So, so when we talk about internal audit, I think, we have been hearing and discussing at length about this as a function is transitioning to the various disruptions and challenges that we see across. But I just would like to put a very quick perspective to this aspect before we go into talking about how technology is relevant for this function more than ever before. So, there are two major disruptions that I think has happened in last decade or so, which has really, impacted the transition of the internal audit function. The first being that the regulators, maybe across, major economies, have been becoming more active, if you like, in place of the right word, to make the management of the organizations more accountable for the way in which they run their organizations. And if we talk of the Indian context, then you will find that now we have the Indian version of SOX, which is called the Internal Financial Controls. Most of the organizations are required to report about the risk management policy and mechanism that they deploy. You have internal audit function, which is now mandatory for most of the organizations. The corporate governance framework now, which the SEBI has brought up based on the Kotak committee recommendations, will pan out, and we will see the impact of that as well. But largely, I think broadly we can say that these have been significant disruptions, which has impacted the functioning of the audit function. The other major disruption has been technology. And when we talk of technology, it's not just about the way we manage information or data or systems. So technology. So for instance, concepts like artificial intelligence or machine learning or your data analytics, big data, cryptocurrency. These concepts maybe 5 to 7 years back were seen as futuristic concepts, but today they are very much reality. We live, with these concepts around us. But it's much larger. The impact of technology is far larger. So very soon we will have driverless cars. Maybe drones will carry goods, and who knows, maybe people as well. We have digitized our home. We have Alexa and whatnot, controlling our day-to-day activities. Most of us are significantly dependent on smartphones. So the fact remains that technology has been a big disruptor, and of course, as internal audit function, we cannot remain disconnected to that. But the larger piece which I would like to present before I go into the specific interface to technology as far as audit function goes is that we have to understand the changing landscape of audit function, the context of audit function, the challenges and role of the function, and how we use technology as a means to achieve the objectives of audit function. Because if we just focus on technology in isolation to make ourselves more efficient or effective, the chances are that we may not be able to achieve those objectives in a holistic manner. So it's first important to get that context, and then I will get into some of it has already been discussed. Maybe some of my perspectives around data analytics, automations, and those concepts. So moving on. So this actually, I believe most of you all have already heard are, within these lines of, of assurances within your respective organizations or, are new to it. The fact remains that, this is basically a manifestation of the disruption that I was talking a while back. So today, if you see, there is an organizational approach to managing risks in the organization. And in the most simplistic way, this basically involves the management, the support functions of the management, and then the independent bodies like internal audit and the statutory audits and other external auditors. So obviously, the management is the primary responsible holder for risk management, designing controls, and maintaining those controls. And so that's why they are called as the first line. And to support them, you have then various functions, like you have controls functions, risk management function, compliance function. You may have also forensic activities, security function, and so forth. Now, looping back to what I discussed a while back, that this has been an outcome of several regulatory changes. So maybe a decade back, most of these activities were neither. I mean, there weren't specific holders to perform those activities in organizations, or you would find internal audit performing most of those activities, whether be it risk management or control testing, some sort of compliance reviews, and that perhaps would serve the purpose, in those times. But now, obviously, you have management taking the driving seat in managing these activities. So where does then internal audit stand? Because that's where internal audit added value or provided assurances, and now you have management directly managing these activities. And there you can then talk of the interplay of technology. You can talk about how audit function then needs to be far more integrated and far more responsive as far as timelines go, to be relevant and to add value to the organization. So first of all, we have to understand that internal audit is not the only assurance provider anymore. There are multiple sets of agencies that provide assurance to the organization, and they are perhaps far more adoptive, or are using technology at a much faster pace that internal audit function has traditionally been using. And that's where the major challenge comes to audit function as to how to interface with technology. So at one hand, you have technology being used to a very significant extent across the organization. So towards that end, then the audit function has to understand the concept of cybersecurity or data prevention or data encryption or the user access management and so forth, and then understand how those impact the organization and bring out the relevant risks for resolution. And on the other hand, how technology can be used by itself, by the audit function itself, to draw, those objectives that are now, the goalpost keeps changing. And obviously the milestones are far bigger now compared to what they were in the past. So that's where I think, the interplay of technology comes in relation to the role that is evolving, and also the expectations which is evolving. Coming to the next slide, I will not go specifically into detail, but this just helps in understanding the broad dimension of the roles that are being played by the three lines today, and how internal audit function is part of that, and therefore, has to be integrated and connected with what is happening not just within the organization, but also across the ecosystem towards assurance deliverables.
सर आप स्लाइड शो रन कर लीजिए.
Sure, I'll do that. I'm so sorry. So this is where I think we come to the concept of continuous auditing or real-time auditing. Now, as I mentioned, historically, audit function had an audit plan for the year or maybe for 3 years, and they would capture or cover areas that they would cover maybe once in a year or once in 2 years. And that would then involve looking at some sample set of data. And perhaps that was perhaps good for the times, which perhaps, where technology was not that integrated in organizations, or there were fewer available means and tools to provide those services. But today, of course, we cannot have the same approach. we cannot say that maybe certain processes can be assured once in a year or once in 2 years, and we can say that we are okay with the integrity of the information that goes into the financial statements, or we are okay with the risk that sits within the balance sheet. It's clearly not sufficient. So definitely, there has to be a dual strategy which audit function has to use. One is, of course, to have an in-depth assessment of the significant risks of the organization or the core controls of the organization, and that will involve, a deep dive review. That will involve a proper planning, and of course, because of that, you can only do it maybe for once in a year or maybe once in 2 years, because you cannot really do justice to those significant risks or those significant pieces of business strategy or processes if you are not doing an in-depth assessment of those, because that's also an expectation which cannot be overlooked. But clearly, we have a gap to fill. And that's where the concept of continuous monitoring or the continuous or the real-time audits come. So there are several sets of processes or several sets of systems in an organization which runs 24/7. And internal audit, therefore, will have to find ways and means to bring more frequency and more real-time approach to review and provide assurance for those processes. Now, those are the core processes, of course, which is off the shelf with most of the data analytics and the RPA. But also along with that, I think every audit function will have to decide which are those specific business-specific processes and controls which are relevant for the organization, which also needs to have a much closer look or much more frequent look from the lenses of internal audit function. But largely, I think the focus will be to make sure that there is a much closer look and much frequent reviews of those processes. Obviously, I will not go into the specific steps that one can use to perform this, but the more relevant point which I would like to bring here is that often people confuse or people perhaps feel that because internal audit is getting into this space, it is equal to continuous monitoring, or it is something which the management does. So clearly, these are two different concepts. These are two different approaches. As far as the continuous monitoring piece is concerned, that is definitely what the management does, or maybe the support functions of the management does. And that essentially is driven to provide integrity to the base data or the base transactions. And this would essentially sit within the ERP systems or the automated systems, which then they develop over and above the ERP systems. And that actually is obviously to deliver a certain set of objectives for the organization. As far as the continuous or the real-time auditing is concerned, now these are processes or activities which are very well integrated with the overall audit approach, with a very specific linkage to the risks that the organization sits in, and also with the specific expectations of the management in terms of what are the core assurance requirements from the audit function. So these have to be tailor-made. These have to be very specific. And obviously one has to see the sustainability aspect as well when one decides to pick up those areas for real-time auditing, because then it needs a whole set of detailed approach in your audit methodology, in your reporting, to the audit committee, in your work program development, and so forth. So that's where one has to be very clear that your real-time audits or continuous audits are not the same as continuous monitoring. They can, of course, be integrated, or they can support the continuous monitoring piece, but definitely there is a clear distinction between these two concepts. So that brings us to now the technology, how and why we should actually use technology in order to deliver at least the first set of objectives of audit function, which is more continuous reviews. So what happens when we continue to remain manually driven in terms of our testing, in terms of our data collection, in terms of our reviews? Obviously, it's easy to say that we can perhaps be not as efficient as we could have been if we were automated, or maybe we are not, that relevant in terms of the findings that we bring. But then when we look at very specific matrices of the internal audit's deliverables, or the KPIs of internal audit, if you like, and I think it is pretty clear that how the automation approach and the use of technology helps the internal audit function. So if you look at the aspect of quality, now if we remain manual in our approach towards data collection or data validation and testing, it really takes a lot of time. And most of the time, I would say 30 to 40% of our time is spent in data collection, which in today's environment cannot be justified, especially with so much of challenges in the business environment and resource challenges. It is not possible for any internal audit function anymore to spend that amount of time in just making sure that the base data that you use can be relied upon. Likewise, the testing cycle. Now, usually, if we take a particular process or an area once in a year, we would typically cover 6 months, 8 months, or 9 months at a stretch. Now, again, it is first of all, it's too late in the day to go back 8 months and test something, because it is perhaps too late to bring out any outliers or exceptions. And at the same time, it's too much of data to process at the same time. It's perhaps again not very smart to deal with such voluminous data at a given go. We need to have a much smarter approach to deal with it in a far more upfront approach. Likewise, the testing time that we take, if we have larger sets of data, if we are very late in the day to look at that data, then of course it is going to be far more time consuming, because then it requires a lot of effort to go back to get into the history of the transactions or to understand the basis of decisions, and it is again not very efficient, even from the management or the from the resource utilization point of view. And coverage, of course. I mean, if we continue to use the same approach as we have been using traditionally, we can perhaps cover 5% or at best 7% of the transactions that we are going to assure, which clearly is not sufficient in terms of what is expected in terms of our overall control objectives, or in terms of what is expected by the regulators or the larger set of stakeholders. So clearly, it's not going to help in providing any meaningful assurance if we just continue to look at 2 to 5% of the data and say that on the basis of this, we can give the larger assurance. So this is where I think it becomes very clear that there is a strong case of bringing more automation and technology in the internal audit activities. And then let's see how the use of data analytics or automations can really help us in a meaningful way. So a couple of areas where we can definitely use data analytics is in relation to compliance management, forensic, fraud risk assessments. Of course, we discussed, and it's widely been discussed across the industry in terms of operating processes and internal controls, of course. So let's look at each of these areas, and see what can be specifically achieved by deploying data analytic tools. So when you look at compliance, I mean, this is an area which keeps increasing. Yeah, as the business grows, or as an organization gets into different geographies or different product lines, the compliance requirements keep growing, and it is almost impossible to keep pace with not just in terms of the outcomes, but also just in terms of what are those compliance requirements. So of course, it is very important to have some strategy to understand what are the regulatory requirements, and then how we can build a library which is sustainable, which can help us understand how did we manage those regulatory requirements. So it at least helps us to understand whether we have deficiency in the data quality that we have been using or that we will use to understand the regulatory requirements, or to what extent then we can actually place reliance on those data sources, and then we can perhaps give assurance about the status of compliances. Of course, it is linked to the impact on the reputation of the organization or regulatory actions, but more so it helps us to perhaps get a better understanding of how we can manage the same compliance requirements with far more efficient utilization of resources and time if we use the concepts of data analysis and have a more leading approach rather than a lagging approach as far as compliance is concerned. In relation to the fraud risk assessments and forensics, I think definitely this has huge potential. As we get more integrated in terms of our interface with the markets, with the customers, with the financial institutions, banks, vendors, so is the risk of fraud. Because today you have at least multiple systems operating parallelly within the organization. You have so much access available through social media, and it is almost impossible then to manage your fraud risks in the same traditional approach. And of course, we need to develop internal data sets within the organization that can again give us good indication of where the organization is vulnerable towards fraud risks. That's clearly a very good business case to deploy data analytics. But along with that, I think today we have most of the companies are exposed to your UK Bribery Act or the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. There are money laundering risks. You have conflicts of interest. You need so many declarations. So there again, we can definitely deploy smart data analytics to improve the disclosure requirements and also improve the internal mechanisms to identify if there are any outliers in these areas. Operational performance, I would not like to discuss in detail because that I think has been the most discussed topic. But of course, as I mentioned, every organization has its own set of risks, has its own sets of dependencies on systems or data sets, and that's where I think one has to fit to size or fit to require, fit for purpose requirements on data analytics. So it could be inventory management in case of an FMCG. It could be management of receivables for a finance company or collections for a finance company. So I think every organization will have different approaches, but largely it will impact the performance indicators. It will impact the performance efficiencies of the organization. And again, if we talk of business case of making investments in more and more automation and more technology, unless we are able to bring out the use of how the automations has been able to have more improved business decisions or more smarter responses towards risks, it will be very difficult to keep sustainable investments in technology for any organization. So I think it's more about how we can unlock the value of the technological investments that have been made in our organizations. And of course, like compliance and risk assessments, internal control has a great application for data analytics. Segregation of duties or user access reviews or access controls reviews. We mentioned about the code of conduct. So these are just few small examples, but there are larger areas where one can apply the data analytics in the management of internal controls. For instance, authority matrix, or for that matter, any discount related applications where most of the organizations have had huge issues regarding validation of that's huge marketing spend. So there are enough and large number of uses where data analytics can be applied for improving the control environment of an organization. So moving on to the next few slides where we capture the steps of the data analytics, which I would not like to go into detail, being sensitive of the time. But couple of pointers over here from my side. I think, it is very important. So as we, so from an internal audit standpoint, as we decide to use data analytics for the purpose of our reviews, it is, a couple of things become very important. First and foremost, it's very important to talk of, which tool or which system has to be deployed. I will not go into specific evaluation because, that's completely a decision which every organization has to make. But I would like to talk about the actual execution of data analytics. What are the concerns or what are the pointers that one has to keep in mind? So first of all, it is very important to understand the data universe. So if you decide to use data analytics for a particular process or a particular system, it becomes very, very important to understand that where the data resides. And most often than not, the data would not be, sitting in one standard system. There will be multiple unstructured, systems where you will have to collect data. So that becomes a challenge, and obviously those challenges have to be overcome. But it is very important to understand that which data sets will be used and from where they will be procured. The other one is, of course, the validation of data, and I think most of the time this step is overlooked. But it is as important step as any other in the data analytics piece. Lack of discipline in data entry, or for that matter, incorrect selection of the data universe, or lack of integration, or issues with data transfer, so and so forth, can cause data which is not correct or relevant for the purpose of analysis. So there has to be a mechanism to ensure that the data is validated before it is used for analysis, and there can be several testing approaches or strategies that can be deployed in, and this could be in terms of collaboration of data through alternate sources, or reconciliations with the master data. So obviously it would depend upon which area one needs to use for data analytics, but there has to be a very evolved mechanism for the data validation. The testing is obviously the most important step, but the biggest challenge over here is the test scripts that are to be used for the purpose of running the analytics. Now, mostly what happens is that there are restrictions in the tools that we use to test to change the test scripts. And in an evolving business, new risks comes, or some new processes are brought, or existing processes are changed, which then requires changing of test scripts. So this is an area where I think there has to be a thought process that how this can be managed. Neither you can use the test scripts that you developed 3 years back because it will perhaps not serve the objective. Or also you cannot keep changing your test scripts every month, because then you cannot rely, or you cannot have competitive. So you will not have any meaningful use of those activities. So that's an area where one has to really look at. There are few emerging tools which perhaps helps in managing this challenge. But again, that depends upon where, what size of the organization is and whether it's really worth making those investments. The last piece is, of course, your outcomes. So once you have your outcomes in place, what do you do with that? So it is very important, again, to have a very integrated thought process as to how this piece of analysis will help the organization or will serve the objectives of internal audit function. So will it be used for deciding the scope of audits, or will it be used for risk assessments? Will it then be part of the line, the second or the first line for their own compliance monitoring or control assessments, or how that particular piece of analysis will be used in a very holistic way in the organization has to be very clearly articulated. And of course, it has to be sustainable, because one of data analytics really, in my experience, is far more disruptive than helpful in organizations. So in order to provide sustainable value, one has to articulate very clearly what would be the the end results of those analytical outcomes. Moving on to subsequent areas of automation, having looked at the importance of data analytics, it is then important to understand how do you then make data analytics more efficient? Because as we discussed, there are a couple of dependencies of data analytics, and the most important one being manual generation or acquisition of data, and of course validation of data. So that's where then automation comes into play. So obviously there are advantages, there are benefits of using automated tools to use data analytics. It helps to save time. It helps to cover larger piece of data, which helps you to get much better insights. It reduces resource requirements. It is more efficient. I think these are the usual or the obvious value adds of automating the testing and data analysis in any audit function. So I really don't think I would like to go into specific details. So just to look at specific applications where automation helps. A lot of literature is already available. A lot of applications are either being implemented or under review across organizations. So this is again something which is a moving piece. But obviously, as we stand and as we understand, these are the common applications that one can use to deploy automation in terms of the audit reviews. We already discussed the major challenge of data acquisition and data validation. That's where obviously it helps. The other piece which is very important is in relation to the risk quantification, and this is again leading to the point where we said that if we just adopt a sampling approach, then if we arrive at any decisions on risk ratings or risk quantifications, then perhaps it's as good as the size of the sample or the relevance of the samples. But if you have a much larger population at your disposal, and if you are able to provide a much better insight in terms of quantifications, then obviously the risk ratings or the risk analysis is far more of a far greater quality, and that obviously results in far better responses and much better business decisions. So definitely an area where automation helps. The other one obviously being testing. If we can automate some of the regular or the routine test scripts, it again results in our ability to use them more often. It can result in faster turnaround times, and of course helps us in much quicker resolutions. These are sort of three buckets, if you like, in terms of where we can use automation in a tangible fashion. So at the start of the presentation, I mentioned that audit as a function has to have interface with technology both from within and of course to understand also the environment of the technological risks so that it can provide meaningful assurance to the organization. So IT control testing is something which is more important now than ever before, mainly because of the risks that it poses and the disruptions that it causes within the organization. So this is an area where, of course, one can make a business case of deploying automation tools to perform these tests. Likewise, we discussed in bits throughout the presentation about the business controls, business processes where we can deploy automation. And the piece which we did not discuss, which is also relevant, is how we can deploy automation within the audit function to obviously reduce the resources or reduce the time required to perform several activities such as tracking of actions or capturing the outcomes of the previous audits in the last 4 or 5 years, so that we can have a greater insight on the risk profile of the businesses and processes, document management and so forth, testing, retention. So those there are several avenues where automation can help audit function become far more efficient. I think this has been already discussed, and I wouldn't go into specific details. But again, this is an area where it's not just a regulatory requirement, and so it has to be done. But obviously, testing of financial controls is a very important core activity in the organization. And this slide helps to understand how this can be strategized or planned in a far more efficient way. It is a very, very voluminous task. It requires a lot of resources. And of course, this is an area where automation can greatly help, not just in terms of the execution, but also in terms of the quality of outcomes that can be brought as the control improvements or control enhancement goes. We already discussed the IT control testing. So looking at several areas. So for instance, user access management or incident management, vulnerability resolutions, data backups, and so forth. So there are several areas where which are almost impossible to review manually. One can actually deploy automation to look into these aspects, which again results in significant value add to the organization. So I think by and large that wraps up the presentation, and I would hand over this back to the coordinator.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for enlightening our concepts, understanding, and knowledge on such vast topics in such short time. So whether it is being covering of data analytics for compliance, operational performance, internal controls, and fraud and risk assessment, till data analytic methodology. Furthermore, with the use of an automation in IA and further soft testing techniques. So we are being enlightful that you have highlighted such great topics with us. So before going now, I guess we have time to take some question and answer series, which has been raised by our viewers. But before going to question and answers series, I'm happy to share that today they are in our session. There are total more than 1,700 viewers on our today's session, and we have received some good question and answers from our viewers, which I'm going to take one by one. So I would like to take the first question, which has been raised. Okay, so one of the viewers has asked, sir, which software packages are used for an internal audit?
Meg, who do you want it to answer? So,
specifically, they have asked that software packages which is specifically being used for an internal audit.
Teammates? Jitendra, you want to add anything? Teammates is one.
Yeah, so we have been utilizing Audit as a tool. Audit is a really nice tool. This is a US MNC which they sell, and it's a very user friendly. Audit Board would certainly be one. From data analytics point of view, the way I talked, SAP Analytics Cloud SAC is there. Power BI is generally very good, user friendly, which we have been utilizing. So it's a Power Query plus Power BI is again a good combination from data analytics point of view, and SAC, as I said, and you can utilize the, in case the organization has a SAP, then SAP BIW is again a very good tool. From audit management perspective, it is specifically, I would say, Audit Board, because in our organization, my team is also responsible for SOX as well as for audits, and it serves both the purpose. And I talked about the various benefits which we were able to get from the Audit Board tool.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. The next question is regarding the statutory auditor perception and the regulatory body perceptions on new technology, robotics, artificial intelligence, etc. in coming years. Means with respect to the stat audit and perceptions in the regulatory body perceptions on new technologies. So I would like that you may highlight some points on this with respect to such angle as well, taking robotics and artificial intelligence, etc. in next coming years.
I'll just, I'm just, I can start and then you can certainly build upon. To me, see, government is very, very pro on the analytics piece. We can see, they are applying a lot of tools on, like for GST as well, to find out those, culprit kind of people also. So that's again, so I would say from regulatory perspective also, they are very, very pro on the data analytics piece. GST is one of the example which I just quoted. And again, even the importance of, the recent regulation which was there, recent order was there, wherein MCA also wanted that audit log has to be there. That's again goes to that in case those, unless and until those audit logs are not available, will not be able to do all those analysis. So therefore, in my view, these are two examples which I can, clearly think of, wherein, the regulatory are very, very, the government is very, very pro towards, and again, the digital India, the Make in India, all these aspects are certainly there. Which are very, very pro to digitalization and the IT piece. Yeah, Siddheshwar, you want to add something?
Yeah, Jitendraji. I think Jitendraji, you have rightly highlighted, and in the last budget also we saw that digitization of the MCA. Yeah, so that is already there, and I think in terms of having an audit trail in a digitized form has also been talked about, but yes, it has been deferred for 1st April 2022. So I think this year, if we look at, there is a clear signal by the regulators that all our approach and methodology of executing audits, whether it is a stat audit or a internal audit, digitization should come in place. I'm not saying RA or RPA, only the process, because the audit logs have to be maintained, and that will come from 1st of April 2022. So I think the message is loud and clear from the government and regulators. Yeah.
Yes, sir, you have very well explained and highlights the few major areas where the digitalization is being adopting. I guess the query of the person will be ended with this particular areas. Now, the third question has been brought up, which is asking about the examples of advising or saving management of imminent risk, whereby due to outbreak of pandemic in November 19, applying technology, how did we organization assess the emerging risk scenarios, reprioritize the audit plan, carrying out IA and report to management on identifying risk areas and the recommendations obviously to the management? So I would like to that if you be able to add some points and some examples that how can we, in the outbreak of pandemic in November 19, how can we, the organization, reassess everything with the emerging risk scenarios, reprioritize the audit plan, and we submit the IA to the management with identified risk areas.
Am I audible, Mehak? Am I audible?
Now you are audible, sir. Yeah,
okay,
now you are audible.
Okay. Though I would like Jitendra ji to definitely add and Ashish ji to add on this, but I think when we all have passed through the pandemic and we are still passing through, and that's why we call it like an endemic, cyber threat has been one of the critical areas. I think the work from anywhere concept, remote working concept has triggered, and cyber has taken impetus in terms of the controls that are there. Second, I think anti-fraud controls has again been a focus area. So these two have been clear-cut focus areas, which I think the expectation of the board and audit committee has been there. And I think we've been looking at our audit steps and at the same time performing the audits remotely. How do we give comfort to the board and the audit committee? And these two specific areas has been the need of the hour, and to some extent, I would say a challenge also for us, because we all have sailed through the same boat.
Very well agreed, sir.
Yeah. Ashish, would you like to add something?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking me, Jitendra ji. So I think I completely resonate with the point made that, every organization, and for that matter, the internal audit function had been at different level of maturity before the pandemic in terms of how they were interfacing with technology and largely how they were managing their audit activities. And, the expectations of the board and to a very large extent management was first of all that, okay, tell us what is the impact of pandemic on the organization? What are the risks that are bringing? So I think as an audit function, if I can say about us, we were the first people to bring up the impact assessment and the risk assessment of pandemic on the operating environment, on the control environment, on, the continuity of the business and so on and so forth. It completely throwed open, the whole sort of traditional approach towards auditing. So whenever now we are planning audits or we're executing audits, the approach is always on, is this sustainable? Can it be performed, without any human intervention? Is it system dependent or is it person dependent? What is the integrity of the data that is being used to support the business decision? So there are several pointers now which perhaps were taken for granted before, and the focus was more on the outcome or the results of the test. So I think so the focus is more towards now the sustainability of operations, the integrity of the data and processes, and from the standpoint of cyber risks, of course, I completely resonate. It is perhaps the biggest concern for any organization, because most of the devices are not encrypted. We had no option. We are continuing to use remotely. That poses a very serious threat to any organization. And we have seen instances of cyber attacks, not just to the private industry, but also to the government institutions. So it's a very, very, live risk as we speak. Fraud risks, of course, has always been a concern, continues to remain a concern. Given the fact that audit is, and perhaps the other assurance functions are also remote, it definitely increases the incidence of fraud risk. So definitely then in that situation, our assessment of fraud possibilities are far higher now compared to what it would have been. So therefore the risk thresholds that we gave or the risk ratings that we gave are far different from what we were giving maybe 1 year back or 2 years back. Yeah, that's all for me.
Agreed, sir. And this was n number of actually important on-ground reality where we are facing through this pandemic. So moving on to our next question, sir. They have brought up that how could we use technology in bank audit? So Ashish sir, Jitendra sir, and Deshpal sir.
See, I'm just thinking that how can we differently use it in bank audit, because one of the things which in bank audit is concurrent audit, real-time audit. I think if you ask me, in my view, financial sector, not only banks but financial sector, I'm including NBFCs and all of them. They could be, and rather should be also, the first ones to embrace robotic process and robotic audit. When I say that in terms of technology, because the very concept of concurrent audit has emerged from banks. Till today, if we see banks, they have, because there is a lot of sensitivity in terms of the real-time checks that needs to be performed on account of anything really going wrong, because then it is like you cannot undo certain times if you talk about a bank. So I think what all we three of us have spelled out in terms of the approach and the areas that can be covered, it lays a lot of emphasis, particularly in the financial sector, and banks being obviously prominent in that. Also insurance, so banks and insurance, NBFCs. I think those could be the first ones which wherein technology can play a pivotal role. Anything my co-speakers would like to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, the only point which I believe is that generally speaking, our bankers may not provide all those data accesses to the relevant auditor for the concurrent audit. So some of where even I think your presentation also mentioned about the access aspect of it. If 2-3 things can be done, like if if suppose if I have been appointed as a auditor of any bank for the concurrent audit, if I can talk to my bankers and talk through about whether I will be able to get the access of this data in this certain format, if those terms and conditions can be agreed upon, then certainly, and obviously the continuity, that repetitive aspect remains there, then any consultant or any CA firm can build upon they can start with the Excel macros, I would say, and then if the continuity remains there, and if there is a investment of time permits, then certainly they should go for identifying any tool through which any repetitive kind of data analytics which they do perform on the data which they receive from the bank, if they want to able to invest the time and money on that, and can go for it. But I would say the starting point would be first to agree upon with the formats or with the data which will be available in terms of data analytics to the auditor, and then if that is so, then the next step would be to invest the time first in creating those macros for the Excel itself for the task, and and then moving forward to the tools which may be an idea tool or which may be even a Power BI tool, wherein those kind of visualization and analytics can be performed. So I would say those will be the steps towards the automation or data analytics from the bank audit perspective.
Right. Yeah, that is an issue, practical issue. And I'll just add here that even when you talk about statutory audit, that is also going to take the color of a robotic audit. Gradually, that also we will see. There are checks that can be performed. I think to start with, it is in the operational areas, but we will very soon see the light of the day for those aspects as well.
True.
Agreed, sir. Thank you so much for highlighting such major areas. So next question that I have raised, that currently the IT auditors are been there which are assisting internal auditors. But in the future, would all the internal auditors need to be IT auditors, and there would be no difference between them all? So,
Ashish ji, go for it.
Sure. So I think, I can understand, the perspective with which this question has been raised. And I can also understand the anxiety that, chartered accountants would have. But I mean, the competencies and the skill set that is needed to be an IT auditor need not be, there with all the auditors. Yeah, because just like technical auditors, you have auditors who go and look at the plant operations or the infrastructure. It's not necessary that general auditors or the career auditors need to have specialized skills in specific areas. But having said that, it is so important to understand the risk profile. We were talking of the cyber risks. We were talking about data protection, encryption. I mean, I don't think, forget about an auditor, as finance professionals, we cannot afford to remain disconnected with the environment in which today. It's such an integrated environment today. Your vendor is connected with you, your customers are connected with you, your banks is connected. I mean, how can you operate without understanding how this entire ecosystem works technologically? So some basic understanding is definitely needed at a conceptual level. Appreciation of the risk is needed. One need not know the specific, the technical aspects of configuration or the specific aspect of networks, which I think can always be, supplemented through expertise. Yeah, that would be my response.
Very well added, Ashish ji. Yeah, Jitendra ji, you want to add? Then I'll just say something on this.
So, because I was attending some, webinar, and there was one good phrase which was used, like, we need purple people. And what does that mean, purple people? Purple people is, the red people are the person who knows the technology. Blue people are the person who knows the business. And we would certainly need a purple people more in our function. So same goes from the audit perspective also. Like, even in internal audit or any audit function, now we can't just say that, this is an IT auditor's job, therefore, I'll not be able to do it. I would say more and more, obviously, one piece, as Ashish rightly mentioned, there will be few specific aspects of, like, ITGC generally would be, taken care of by an IT auditor itself. But I would say more of an automated control, which will be wherein the IT or any auditor cannot just consider system as a black box that, something is going in and something is coming out of it. They will have to put more and more, thoughts behind it, that what is that, how the system is working, what is going inside, and what all checks and validations are getting performed. So I would say, gradually, certainly, we are moving towards that. Even if we look at our own teams, we have now, moved more towards purple people, wherein those are techno, business person who understands the audit, who understands the technology well, and certainly gradually we have to move towards that, so that purple people theory certainly fits into this whole thing.
So Jitendra ji, I think you very well articulated the theory concept, purple and blue. See, how I look at it is, and I'm sure we have many of our senior members also on this hearing us out. So I'll give two examples. One is, let's look at a security audit. So historically and even today in some companies, when we do a security audit, we look at agreements and we look at what has been done. So physical security we are talking about. Today, some of the organizations have moved to logical security. Yeah, so you entered into an office and perhaps you may not find a guard, but there is a sensor and it opens the door for you and all that. I think, and that's where I'm just reflecting back on the first video I had shown, where change is the only constant. So 2000 years back, or so 2000 BC, sorry, when all the auditors, questers, which were called at that time, they were coming in horses and all. Today we move in planes. Yeah, I think we have embraced the change over a period of time. This particular generation of auditors, whatever age it may be, so I'm being neutral on the age, is also witnessing a change from a technology standpoint, and we need to embrace that. Some of our senior professionals, the second example what I wanted to add was, they would have seen what is called the Bahi Khata. Yeah, so the manual way of recording things, wo pehle jo aaj se around 50-60 years back, so we didn't have Tally and all those software, so it was all and manually. I also remember those, though I'm not that old, but I remember that ulte ticks lagana and all that stuff. Yeah, so today we don't carry those red pen, green pen and all that, blue pen, all that stuff, but it has actually translated from a physical to a logical form. Our institute is also doing a lot in terms of certain certifications. I think it is basically to promote all those things that we need to embrace that sort of a change which is there. So to my mind, how I look at it, and again I'm reflecting back on the presentation which I gave on RPA and RA, particularly on robotic audit RA. I think the future lies in terms of, yes, some of the niche areas which auditors will see, but the standardized areas, if I can say, the 5 business cycles, order to cash, hire to retire, and record to report, and all that. Those are the ones wherein technology is going to play a dominant role, and auditors will have to, I think, upskill themselves rather than getting replaced. So that's how I look at it. And if you ask me, the 360-degree holistic approach which I had presented is to a large extent my brainchild, and I've included that as part of it. So today, if I have to look at a anti-fraud control, it's not that I have to rely on some expertise. Yes, there are areas beyond the line. There are areas in cyber certain. So today, if you enter into a system and there is an access right, I think to have a check on the access right is something which is expected today as a general control to be performed by internal auditor. But if there is a configuration control, configuration check, which is at the back end, that is the work of the IT person. So we are not talking as auditors to go and become tech savvy so that we start writing queries at the back end, which perhaps maybe a couple of years down, a couple of decades rather down, but at least from a logical access, as an example I'm giving, logical access type of checks is something which should be part of, and I think the audit committee, other stakeholders have started expecting that. We may have expertise. So basically either we upskill or we get replaced. I think upskill is the need of the hour because that is what the demand is. That is how the profession is wanting us to look at things. Yeah. That's pretty much, I thought I'll just add to.
So I completely agree that today the demand has been risen up that we need to get purple. That to, along with the business understanding, the risk understanding, we need to have an technical and system understanding too, where we could obviously map the controls and we could able to identify where it is loop, is any loop hole or behind, or we could have configure the more preventive or detective control over the system.
I call the smart and digital internal audit as looking beyond risk. That's how I call it. One is to start looking beyond risk, because it's not that if risk has to feed strategy, and that's what the COSO guideline, the framework says, that means the auditors have to look beyond risk.
Yeah, completely agree, sir. So, I'm taking the last question of today's session that it has asked that for a relatively small company, it is quite usual that management and audit committee may not want to spend much more investment in softwares or processes. So owing to this, there are chances that internal audit may be required to rely on the traditional method of working. So is there by which IT or data analytics can be used without much investment in such sophisticated softwares?
So yes, the answer is yes, of course. Why not? I mean, you don't need high-end tools or systems to perform data analytics. I mean, it has to be fit for purpose, right? I mean, larger the organization, larger the transactions, larger the data, larger the risk, so larger the investment in technology. But if it is a small size or a mid-size organization, in fact, as an auditor, they should, in fact, also lead the digital decisions of the organization. That it has to be obviously relevant, and there has to be a proper business case for making investments in technology. So I don't see that as a constraint at all.
Right, Ashish. I think it is more to do with the scalability of processes. If the business grows, if it is expanding, it is more to do how scalable my systems and processes are. If a manual system is scalable to achieve a particular growth in an organization, so I think be it. It's perfectly fine. But growth has its own challenges, and that's where we look at the triple P, the people, process, and platforms.
So I agree.
I completely agree, sir. The manual process, whatever the process, if it wants, then it needs to be there. Whether it is automation, the techniques we as an internal audit. So, sir, this is the end of our question and answer series. We are privileged, and it's a pleasure to have 8 IA leaders in our today's session as a speaker. And I would like to summarize that as long as our business process being simultaneously, it is very important and it's a great for a real-time audit in order to have control embedded in our system. it is preventive, corrective, and detective control to be embedded in systems. So finally, I would like to thank you all your members for being giving us such an enlightful knowledge to us, and like to thank ICAI London chapter, our UK chairman Sir C. Ajay Kumar, for hosting such great seminar and such a great topic, which is a need in today's changing world. But before concluding, I would like to ask Nanda to add some point on our seminar more valuable at the end. Nanda, here unmuted. Let me check. Arvi sir? Yes, let me just 1 minute. Sir, we have received one another question from our participant. I would like that if you add some, we conclude. So they have asked, is teammate analytics a good tool Excel to use? Can you add some points on this?
Meg, sorry, I didn't hear clearly. Which software you said?
I have mentioned, is teammate analytics tool within Excel to use?
Is teammate
Analytics.
Teammate analytics is better than Excel.
Is a great tool or a good than Excel to use?
Sorry, I think I am not able to hear clearly, but I think all tools, they have their own, I think, capabilities in terms of, so Excel itself also, like, I don't know, I didn't hear it clearly, but Excel is also a very good tool to do analytics, undoubtedly.
And we agreed being on, obviously, only.
Maybe Ashiji, you heard, so you can add, but I didn't hear, sorry, clearly.
Yeah, Siddharth, the question is whether teammate analytics is good enough or is better than Excel or not. That's the basic question which they have. Honestly, I haven't worked on teammate analytics, so I won't be able to comment on that. But I agree with Siddheshwarji that first, Excel itself is a very, very powerful tool. If in case you are able to get into details of it, macros, pivots, slicers, there are n number of new things which are there, and Excel is evolving day by day, so certainly that's there. I can just take an example of within our function, we moved from Excel. Excel is certainly there, but we moved to SAP BW also, to Power BI also, SAC also. That was more from a as the organization evolves, or organization's digital journey evolves, then the audit function also evolves along with them. So that's what we have been capitalizing on, the investments made by the organization. But I agree that if utilized properly, that certainly has a lot of good capabilities to build upon in any kind of analytics.
Jitendraji, I heard you clearly, so I think I get the question better now.
Yeah, please.
The advantage of using any tool, whether it is Teammate, so I have also not used Teammate for reporting, I have used for audit purposes, but not for analytics. Advantage of any tool over Excel would be if the volume of data, number one, is high, which the Excel cannot accommodate. Number two, if there are multiple sources from which the data needs to be extracted simultaneously, I think, and there are other parameters also, but these two are the critical ones, then someone can look at a tool. And third, okay, let me add one more perspective. If we want to build up a query, which is basically having multiple parameters to be analyzed simultaneously, then a tool becomes effective, not an Excel, because there is a capability or a capacity to which you can build up a macros. So otherwise Excel is good. Yeah.
Well, it's a good point. And then I would conclude such a great seminar. Thanking we are all honored that today in our session we have you who have shared such a great experiences, knowledges with us. So thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for a great panel. It was a really nice platform, and we had a good time. We had a good discussion with Siddheshwar ji and Ashish ji as well, and Ajay ji and Nanda sir as always.
Thanks to all of you, Nanda sir, Jitendra ji, Ashish ji, Mehak, Karthi, and Ajay ji being the host. Thanks a lot, and thanks to all the participants.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the wonderful event and for the speakers.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for the great organization of this event, and for the participants also to come on the weekend and hear our perspectives.
Yeah.
Very, very, very big appreciation. Thank you.
True. It requires a lot of passion to spend their Saturday night with us.
We are honored that we have you on our panel to share guidance to us, because we are in phase to get more reality.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.